wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you.
All right, Sooner Nation, let's talk about Oklahoma's defensive line, because if Brent Venables needed a poster child for building an SEC-ready defense, this is where you would start. Year 2 of the SEC for Oklahoma, and this group, they're no longer a work in progress. They are battle-tested, they're physical, they're deep, and they're quickly becoming the identity of a team that needs to reestablish itself, desperately, I might add, as a national contender. Now, think back to a year ago when everyone wondered whether Oklahoma's defensive front could hold up against the SEC offensive lines. Those questions answered emphatically. The Sooners gave up just 3.1 yards per carry and less than a rushing touchdown per game last season. Those numbers would be elite in any league, let alone the toughest one in the country. And if you were talking about a defensive front that's anchored by R. Mason Thomas on the edge, freshman standout Jayden Jackson on the inside, plus a disruptive rotation with Gracen Halton, David Stone, Damonic Williams, Jayden Terry. This front didn't just arrive to the SEC. They didn't just survive the SEC. They thrived in it. Now, a season later, the group is even stronger. Thomas is back and one of the top pass rushers in the country. He leads the team in sacks, tackles for loss, and quarterback pressures. Jackson looks every bit like Oklahoma's next star in the middle of the defensive line. Halton led all returning FBS defensive tackles and pressure rate. And then there's this upside. Guys like Marvin Jones Jr., who arrives from the portal with real SEC experience. And then you got 5-star David Stone, who could be the next household name in Norman. Throw in there PJ Adebawore, the athletic freak who hasn't quite put it all together yet. And you've got a unit with both a high floor and a scary ceiling. And it doesn't stop with just the starters. Behind them, you've got young talents like Daniel Okoye, Nigel Smith, CJ Nixon. They're all waiting for their shot, and it gives Oklahoma a 2-deep rotation that most SEC programs would envy. Now, that's a credit to Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis, who in just 3 short years have flipped this group from a weakness in the Big 12, the type of front that teams in that conference bullied, to a strength that SEC offenses now, they've got a scheme around. But here's the bottom line. The bar has moved going into 2025. A couple years ago, the question was whether Oklahoma's defense could survive in the SEC. In 2025, the expectation is for this group to lay the foundation for what the Sooners could ultimately build championships on. If Thomas adds consistency, if Jackson and Williams continue to dominate inside, and if either Jones or Adebawore reaches their potential, we could be talking about the best defensive front, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. And that isn't just hype. It's the reality of where this unit stands. The Sooners finally have the horses to run with the big boys in the trenches. And if everything comes together, don't be surprised if they trample them. What's up? This is the Sooner Nation Podcast. Welcome back to the Sooner Nation Podcast. We're going to talk all things Oklahoma football over the next coming weeks and throughout the season. Obviously, in this first episode of 2025, it's a big one because we're really diving into the unit that could define Oklahoma's 2025 success. Obviously, it's the defensive line. If you followed Oklahoma football for a while, you kind of know the narrative. The explosive offense, great quarterbacks, and skilled players all over the place. But the big question every time Oklahoma has made the jump in the national stage has been this. Can the defense, specifically the defensive line, hold up against the big boys? Well, a year ago in Oklahoma's first season in the SEC, the Sooners gave us an answer, and that answer was a resounding yes. OU went from being pushed around in the Big 12 just a few years ago to holding the SEC opponents to 3.1 yards per carry. We already talked about that. But that wasn't just good, that was elite. To put that into perspective, that ranked top 10 nationally. And right alongside teams like Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, programs known for their physical fronts. And then here's another stat. Oklahoma gave up less than 1 rushing touchdown per game last season. And that tells you everything about how tough this group was inside the red zone. Now let's fast forward to 2025. The Sooners aren't just looking to hold their ground anymore. They've got the pieces to dominate. Pro Football Focus ranks Oklahoma's defensive line 9th in the entire country, one spot ahead of Texas. That's not just preseason hype. That's a reflection of the depth, the production, the upside that's on this roster. So let's take a few minutes. Let's break it down position by position, starting with the defensive ends, because that's where R. Mason Thomas is, and he is undoubtedly the star of the show. He's the guy that the SEC offensive coordinators circle on film and spend their weekend trying to scheme against. Last year, he broke out with 9 sacks, and 6 of those came against SEC competition. That's not feasting on cupcakes, guys. That's producing against the toughest schedule that Oklahoma has ever played. He's got that rare combination of first step quickness and closing speed that makes him a nightmare for tackles. And more importantly, he's become the closer of this defense. Think about the games against Auburn and Alabama last year, both tight in the fourth quarter, and both times it was Thomas. He made the kind of plays that sealed the win for the Sooners. He's not just productive, this guy is clutch. Now, lining up opposite of him is one of the biggest additions of the offseason for Oklahoma through the transfer portal, Marvin Jones Jr. This was a huge get for Oklahoma. He came in from Florida State. He also spent time at Georgia before that. He put up 5 sacks last season for the Seminoles in a shortened season. And he brings with him not just talent, but experience, and that is huge. He's a former 5-star recruit. He knows what it's like to face top-level competition, and he's got the frame that will hold up in the SEC. The idea, I love this, the idea of pairing him with Thomas, it means that Oklahoma could have one of the most dangerous pass rushing duos in the entire Southeastern Conference. But what really makes this group stand out, in my opinion, is the depth. You got PJ Adebawore. He's been waiting for this moment, and it could be the year he has his breakthrough. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the pedigree. Taylor Wynn impressed in the spring, showing flashes of what he could be. And then you've got 2 redshirt freshmen, Danny Okoye and Wyatt Gilmore. Both of those guys have the potential to become difference makers a little bit on further down the road. This isn't just a 2-man show for Oklahoma's defensive front. The Sooners can rotate fresh bodies at defensive end all game long. And as we know, that's pretty critical for the SEC grind. Now let's shift a little bit into the interior, where Oklahoma might actually be stronger than what they are on the edge. You start with Damonic Williams. He returns as the anchor of this group. He's the kind of player who doesn't always rack up the stats, but his impact, it's undeniable. He takes on double teams, he plugs gaps, and he lets the linebackers fly free. Every great defense has that guy who does the dirty work, and for Oklahoma, it's Williams. Next to him, Gracen Halton is quickly becoming a star. He had 5 sacks last season, and here's the kicker. He posted the highest pressure rate of any returning FBS defensive tackle. That means when he's on the field, he's consistently collapsing the pocket and forcing quarterbacks off of their spot. For a defensive tackle, that is pure gold. Halton is disruptive in a way that changes the games. And then you look at Jayden Jackson. He played almost 400 snaps as a true freshman last year. That's a massive workload for a first-year player. And he held his own. True freshman holding his own out there. The growth he's expected to take in year 2 is huge. And then right behind him is the former 5-star recruit, David Stone. Now, Oklahoma fans, we all nearly had a heart attack in the offseason when Stone just briefly, entered the transfer portal. But the Sooners kept him. And he's going to play a big role, I believe, in 2025. He flashed in limited snaps last season. But you can just feel that breakout season coming. Then you're going to add guys like Marcus Strong and Trent Wilson. Those are guys that provide depth and rotational value. And what you've got is a defensive tackle room that's as deep as any in the SEC. And when you put all this together, what do you see? You see a defensive line that checks every single box. Proven starters who can dominate, check. Young guys with upside who are ready to take the next leap, check. A game-changing transfer who raises the ceiling, check. And above all of this, you've got depth. Real, legitimate SEC caliber depth. Now, as an Oklahoma fan, you know this. This transformation of Oklahoma's defensive front did not happen overnight. Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates deserve a ton of credit for what Oklahoma has going for it right now in 2025. You remember when Brent Venables came, right? He said he wanted to build a defense that could compete with the best in the country, not just the Big 12. And that starts up front. Over the last 3 years, these guys have recruited relentlessly. They develop the talent once it's on campus, and they have mined the portal strategically. This result is what we're seeing now. A defensive line that might be the identity of this football team. So let's zoom out for just a second, because this isn't just about stats and personnel. This is about what it means for Oklahoma's chances in the SEC. In this league, games are won in the trenches. You can have all the speed in the world on the outside, but if you can't stop the run, if you can't pressure the quarterback, you're going to get exposed. And we saw it last year. Oklahoma went toe-to-toe with teams like Alabama, Tennessee, and LSU because their play in the trenches. I mean, they gifted Jackson Arnold opportunity after opportunity against the Volunteers. And this year, with another step forward, this is a group that can take full control of games. Think about the ripple effect here. If our Mason Thomas is living in the backfield, quarterbacks are rushing their throws. That makes life easier for guys like Gentry Williams in the secondary. If Halton and Williams are controlling the middle, linebackers like Kip Lewis can flow sideline to sideline. And they can make plays without worrying about blockers in their face. That's how defenses go from good to elite. It's when the front makes everyone else's jobs easier, and this front is absolutely built to do that. So let's close out this preview about the defensive line with this. Oklahoma enters 2025 with a defensive line that isn't just good enough to survive in the SEC, it's good enough to dominate in this conference. If the stars play like stars, if the young talent keeps developing, and if the depth keeps them fresh, this unit legitimately could be the best defensive line in the conference. And if that's true, then why couldn't Oklahoma be a playoff contender? So buckle up, Sooner Nation. The days of Oklahoma being known only for offenses are over. That pretty much happened last year, right? This is Brent Venables' vision, though, for the defensive front. A program that's built on physical, relentless defense. And it starts with the guys in the trenches. All right, Sooner Nations, let's close out this episode by talking about this. Oklahoma heads into the 2025 college season with you got to think, a mix of hunger and frustration. Brent Venables and this team, they've got something to prove. Not just to themselves, not just to the fan base, but to the entire Southeastern Conference. Because if you judge this team by the preseason All-SEC honors list, you'd think Oklahoma was nothing more than an afterthought. Now this week, when the SEC's coaches released their preseason all-conference teams, only 3 Oklahoma Sooners made the cut. Jayden at running back, R. Mason Thomas at defensive end. They both landed on the second team, while long snapper Ben Anderson, the long snapper, he was placed on the third team. And not a single Oklahoma player was picked for the first team. Now look, on the surface, maybe that doesn't sound like a crisis. Preseason lists, they're not just projections, right? They don't win football games, but let's put this into context. Alabama, 11 players recognized. Georgia, also 11 players. Texas, that bitter rival and fellow SEC newcomer, they had 10. Even Florida, a program that's been stumbling through turbulence themselves, they landed 8 guys. And Oklahoma, just 3. And not a single one on the first team. This message is loud and clear. SEC coaches, they don't think much of Oklahoma right now. And if you ask me, but you're probably not, but you are listening to my podcast, this is exactly the kind of disrespect that should light a fire under this football team. Let's break it down just a little bit. First, let's start with Jayden. A Cal transfer might be one of the most exciting additions this roster has had in years. Before injuries slowed him down last season, he was one of the most electric running backs in the entire country. We're talking about a sophomore season in 2023 where he rushed for over 1,300 yards. He scored 12 touchdowns and he led the Pac-12 in rushing. He's got vision, he's got burst, he's got home run speed, all the traits that you need and you want in an SEC workhorse at running back. Yet at Oklahoma, Ott is overlooked. This is a team that this is the guy that the team is expecting to be their man in the backfield. A backfield that's been inconsistent, honestly, since Kennedy Brooks left. And while the coaches gave him a second team nod, they still slotted Texas A&M's Le'Veon Moss ahead of him. Wisner from Texas ahead of him. Fair? Maybe. But I'll say this, if Ott's fully healthy, he's got every tool to outproduce both of those guys this year. And he's the definition of a sleeper that can rise up on all SEC charts. Now let's talk about R. Mason Thomas, because this is the one that bothers me the most. Because if anyone on Oklahoma's roster deserved a first team nod, it's this guy right here. He's not just a solid player. He's one of the best edge rushers in the entire country. 9 sacks last year, 12 and a half tackles for loss, 35 quarterback pressures. And get this, 6 of those sacks, they came in the fourth quarter. That's clutch. That's closing games. That's what separates good pass rushers from game-changing pass rushers. And yet the coaches looked at this guy, they looked at his resume, and they said, nah, second team. Now, don't get me wrong. Guys like Michael Williams at Georgia and Keon Keeley at Alabama, they're great players. But to pretend that Thomas isn't on their level, that's just wrong. The tape, it doesn't lie. He was double teamed. He was chipped by tight ends. He was schemed against all year, and still he produced at an elite level. This snub isn't about his performance. It's about Oklahoma's brand perception in the conference. And that's exactly why the Sooners need to make a statement this fall. Now, as for Ben Anderson, hey, let's give the guys flowers, right? Long snappers don't usually get recognition, but he's seen his share of good moments. I mean, this dude has been nails for Oklahoma the last 2 seasons. Punts, field goals, extra points. He handles all of it, and he handles it with consistency. He even made the Patrick Manley Award watch list for the best long snapper in the country. A third team nod is well deserved, but let's be real here. When your only other preseason honoree is the long snapper, it highlights a broader issue. And that issue is the big omissions. John Mateer, where is he? Nowhere to be found. And this is the guy who led the nation in total touchdowns last season. He finished top 5 in total offense last season. Instead, the SEC coaches, they handled those spots to Garrett Nussmeier, Lenore Sellers, and DJ Lagway, a freshman. Those are good quarterbacks. Again, I'm not saying they're not, but to leave Mateer off this list entirely, that's not just a miss. That's a slap in the face. Then you've got Kip Lewis, second in the entire conference in tackles last year. 0 recognition. Robert Spears Jennings, a steady force in Oklahoma's secondary. Ignored. Isaiah Satigna, who came from Arkansas and is expected to be OU's go-to wideout. Not even a third team nod. So yeah, Oklahoma fans can celebrate Ott, Thomas, and Anderson for making the list, but the bigger picture is this. The SEC, they don't see Oklahoma as a roster loaded with stars. And here's why that matters. Preseason honors, yeah, they don't decide games, but they do shape narratives. They set the tone for how players and teams are viewed nationally. And when playoff voters sit down in November, they're not operating in a vacuum. They remember these preseason lists, and if your guys weren't recognized in August, it takes even bigger performances throughout the season to break through that noise in the fall. Plus, look at the recruiting angle. When Alabama and Georgia can say, we've got 11 guys on all preseason all-conference lists. Texas can say, we've got 10. What does Oklahoma do? They've got to go into those locker rooms. They've got to go into those high schools. They got to go into those transfer portal conversations and go, yeah, we got 3. Guys, that matters. Perception matters. But there is a silver lining, and here's what it is. Being overlooked can be the best motivation. Brent Venables has already said this team is embracing the underdog mentality heading into year 2 of the SEC. And if that's the case, then preseason snubs like this, they fit that narrative perfectly. For Jayden Ott, it's fuel to prove he's the best running back in the conference. For R. Mason Thomas, it's a chance to show he's not just an all-SEC player, but he's an All-American. For Mateer and the rest of the guys who are left off, it's about making the SEC coaches regret those ballots and regret the fact that they provided motivation. At the end of the day, this is bigger than just a list. It's about respect. Right now, the SEC does not respect Oklahoma, and that's fine. Because the best way to earn it is simple this. It's just simple. Go out and win. So while Alabama, Georgia, and Texas bask in the glow of double-digit preseason honorees, Oklahoma walks into this 2025 season with just 3 names on the list and one massive chip on its shoulder. And sometimes that chip is all you need. This team has a chance to flip the script in a very, very big way. Make sure to check us out online, heartland-sports.com. We'll catch you on the next episode. This has been the Sooner Nation Podcast. Boomer.
I'm gonna be the man who's